The beauty of the Belgian Ardennes. It's April 1999 and this the fourth round of the World Cup. It is the oldest professional classic, the Liege Bastogne Liege, and it's in its 85th edition here. I'm Phil Liggett with Paul Sherwin. The race distance 264 kilometres, and Paul, not too many riders left up front here from the 191 that set out this morning from Liège.
Strange tactics as well by Laurent Jalabert, because Jalabert is a man who I feel has got a great chance of winning this race, but like a couple of years ago he's gone out on a very long attack. He's been joined by Stefano Garzelli. They're 35 seconds at the moment ahead of the group we're looking at here, and they're being chased by Jorgen Jaks, who's caught in no man's land, but there is still just over 77 kilometres to go to the finish.
Well, you see many of the riders here in this league group. We're on the way back from Bastogne, by the way, now, wearing leg warmers and certainly long sleeves are the order of the day, because it is very, very cold, 0 degrees Celsius on freezing point. And believe it or not, the forecast towards the end of the day is thunder and the possibility of snow, and we've known that before as well in this race.
That's the amazing part of this area in Belgium, Phil. The weather can change in the matter of a couple of hours. 1 minute you can have bright blue sunshine, the next minute the snow can be coming down, exactly as it was just a couple of days ago in the Revelon, when the snow was blowing across the riders' faces and really making it a very difficult race. We haven't seen too much, in fact, of Micheli Bartley, the winner of that race from a couple of days ago, and I reckon he's still paying for his efforts.
Well, he's in that sort of rather large chase group at the moment. And Jalabert here, finding the temperature must be warming up a bit, taking a bit of a gamble, but the gloves have come off. Stefano Garzelli started off his season on a high note, 4th in Milan-San Remo. So he's now deep in the heart of the Belgian Ardennes, and the weather conditions changing around. There's Oscar Camazin, the world champion, 131, number 1 on the far right, the man that's won the race the last 2 years. And after his brilliant ride in Revelon, well, he's going now for 3 wins in a row.
The champion of Russia at the back there, Sergei Ivanov, riding for the TVM squad, and there's no major move at the front of the main field to try and chase down that attack by Laurent Jalabert. A surprise attack by Jalabert to go out so far from the end of the race like this, a mistake that I feel he's made in the past when he attacked around about 100 kilometres to go. Jalabert, readying himself for what is going to be a long, hard ride if he's going to stay in front, was quite open with his views on the race this morning. You have to be at the front of the race and have good legs. For the moment, I've got pretty good legs, and I hope to be at the front when I get to the Côte de la Redoute.
Well, he's got a good chance now, Paul, because he is clear, but we're only talking of seconds here as he leads with Garzelli. And the main field is getting bigger all of the time as riders are getting back into that group just behind. We're heading up towards the Côte de Rosier, which will take us to the 193rd kilometre of the day. There are 10 climbs which make this race famous in the Belgian Ardennes, and all but one of them are on the way back from the turn at Bastogne.
Stefano Garzelli wearing number 91, a great teammate for Marco Pantani, the winner last year, a surprise winner at the time of the Tour of Switzerland, but certainly a man who the Italians will be looking to in the future to be present when it comes to the Tour of Italy. A very good rider, and I feel a good ally for Laurent Jalabert to have if he hopes to stay clear to his objective of being at the front of the race when he gets to the Côte de la Redoute.
Here's the main field. We're not going back very far, about 40 seconds to this group at the moment, at the most. And they still look as though they're quite unconcerned by the attack. Well, that was a wrong statement, because look at this now. Somebody's launched an attack and Micheli Bartoli's gone.
Mapei very keen to try and split the race up here. That looked very much to me like Andrea Noe, who was leaping out of the group there, trying to split it apart. Micheli Bartoli is in this group at the moment and moving to the front once more. The Lamprey riders trying to stir it up and pull the attack back of Laurent Jalabert. I really feel, Phil, that is a bit of a crazy attack to go out with more than 50 miles left to go to the finish. And a bit of discussion there, Micheli Bartoli and his right-hand man, Paolo Bettini, discussing just exactly where they are in the Belgian countryside.
That's true, and in fact Bartoli there, looking at the little map he's got, he actually loves racing in Belgium. He's a man of the classics. He's trying to emulate Moreno Argentin today by winning this race again, and in fact, if he does, he will carry off the Ardennais weekend, as they call it, although it's no longer a weekend because of the way he ran out the winner of the Flèche Wallonne, which was in fact 4 days ago.
Pretty big group here. Andre Schmiel is in this group, but you can see the Mapei riders taking a keen interest now on the position of Micheli Bartoli in the group. That was Andrea Noe dropping back there. This looks very much like Axel Merckx on the front, another of the big transfers this year. This is Axel Merckx, whose father in fact is commentating for the Belgian television not too far away from us at the moment, and he'd be very happy to see his son at the head of action. In fact, Axel rode a very good Liege Bastogne Liege a couple of years ago, taking 7th place.
Well, I should imagine Dad Eddie's getting pretty excited because his son's developing into being quite a good bike rider now. One or two riders trying to catch the wheels here. Number 96 was Falconi. And this is an interesting little group they're getting going now, because if they can react like this, then we're going to see the other guy, the two leaders up front, come back into the fold.
Now this man we haven't seen a lot of just recently, number 86, that's Cedric Vassar, a former yellow jersey holder in the Tour de France, and he has managed to get himself across to this group.
Well, now there's a lot more urgency now, because the peloton has grown considerably with the groups coming back here since they came through Stavelot. So that's a big bunch, Paul, and it'll take some breaking up, but there's still what? There's still 5 of the climbs to come.
And I feel the most difficult one towards the end is the Côte de la Redoute, and that's where you'll find the main field, which is here, chasing after Jalabert and Gazzelli, will absolutely explode. The group, which they're calling the Group Merckx at the moment, is 48 seconds behind the two leaders, and Jalabert is hoping to try and build up a bigger advantage to that, because as long as he doesn't go over the minutes, he's always going to be very much in sight of the main field.
Well, we're not very far away now from the climb of the Côte du Rossier. And we'll see then just how serious those two riders are up front. The Rabobank rider at the back here is Bert Zberg, and Cedric Vassar is also there. Number 24 is Pascal Chanter of the Casino team, and number 5 here is Axel Merckx himself. I think he's forced this split, but of course he's looking around the group to see if Bartoli's joined, and he hasn't.
Well, 1 or 2 riders coming across to this group. I caught a sight there of Oscar Kamenzin, but Axel wants to try and split it even further. He wants to try and make it a difficult race. He wants to toughen it up for Team Mapei. Today you can see, in fact, Phil, that the whole of the main field has come up there, so Axel has gone to the front to try and split another group off. But he will have responsibilities to Team Mapei today. He won't be able to ride for the account of Axel Merckx, because Micheli Bartley, let's not forget, has won this race for the last 2 years and will be looking for the hat-trick.
Nice to see a show of form there by the world champion Oscar Kamenzin. There's a Rabobank rider, I think it was Zberg, shot through the inside of our camera, and there he is settling back in now, and it is in fact Beat Zberg who's gone through. We've just gone past Jakska there, the telecom rider, so there's only 2 riders in front now as we head up towards the Rossier climb. And we'll catch a glimpse of the 2 leaders very shortly. But look at this turn of speed from Zberg. He's picked up Cedric Vassar on his wheel.
Cedric Vassar, always the master at long breakaways. He hasn't really shown much form since the early part of this season. He's obviously, like most of the French riders, just trying to base his season around the Tour de France. The Tour de France has become so important for the French riders, and now they're on the foot of the Côte du Rosier, 13% at its highest part and 4 kilometers in length.
And it shoots up to 220 metres, so you can imagine it is a little bit of a nasty one. And we've got 4 riders now trying to get themselves into a chase group. And I'm just wondering how Laurent Jalabert and Gazzelli are coping with this climb. We'll have to wait until the cameras get up there to have a look. Oh, here we go. The sun is out. Don't be fooled by the sun. It's not very hot at all today. In fact, it's rather an unfortunate day, but it's certainly a lot better than it was for the Flesh Wallon.
Axel Merckx has taken himself across, and this is Figueras at the back. He's got a problem. You can see there, in fact, the man who's actually helping him out there is Henny Kuiper. Henny Kuiper, a former winner of some of the best classics around, Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Lombardy. He just happened to be standing at the side of the road when that incident happened.
Well, he did well. He got himself a free top as well, though he's giving it back. That's all right then. So Figueras, under-23 champion a couple of years ago, now developing as a full professional, and trying to get back on terms here too is the big Seiko rider, and this is Roberto Petito.
Well, I suppose Henny got a bit of a shock there. In fact, he would normally be helping a rider from Rabobank, but it's a gear problem there. It looks as if they were jumping around, and this can happen here in Liege Bastogne Liege because you use nearly every gear in the cluster in a race like this. On the descents, you're using the big ring, and a bit of Italian temperament coming in there. Unfortunately, there's a mechanic on hand to help out.
Now back up to the front, and Jalabert has got himself to set the pace now. The gloves have come off too from Garzelli, so the pace and the temperature warming up just that little bit. An awful long way still to go, of course. We're around about 195 kilometres covered now of the 264, so there's still best part of 70 kilometres left to ride.
Jalabert looking very comfortable. He obviously goes out on these long attacks in a race like Liege Bastogne Liege just hoping there's going to be a counter attack from behind, because I don't think anybody in this day and age of the modern era of professional cycling can hope to stay in the front for 80 kilometres in a race like Liege Bastogne Liege. You have to go back to performances like Bernard Hinault many years ago, who went on to win this race by 10 minutes, and in modern cycling that just doesn't happen.
Well, this is a long climb as we climb the Côte de Rosier, 4 kilometres, and that group behind has grown a little bit now. It was just a couple. It's now what, 2, 4, 6, 8 riders, and there's a few more coming across the gap as well.
Still an awful long way to go, and the sting in Liege Bastogne Liege certainly very much in the tail nowadays, ever since the introduction of that penultimate climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, which really is a swine of a climb, climbing up right out away from the city of Liege. When you think you've come into the finish, you take a left-hand turn and do an extra little loop to go and find this climb through what they call Little Italy.
Well, there's a time check come up there. If only we could find out what it was, but it looks as though, in fact, Garzelli here is having a job holding on to Laurent Jalabert. His face is telling us he's really suffering here. Jalabert, well, he's absolutely storming on this climb at the moment.
These are the kind of climbs Jalabert really likes. He's a little bit in difficulty. In fact, there is the moment when Jalabert gets out of the saddle, accelerates, and Garzelli has been popped off the wheel.
Well, I can't see the sense in that, Paul, because unless Jalabert is anticipating the best part of a 2-hour time trial with some of the best bike riders behind him, he really doesn't want to be rid of this man at this stage.
That's mad. I cannot understand why he's done that. He should have at least slowed down. He's looking over. He's actually surprised to see that he's popped Stefano Garzelli off his wheel. A little shake of the head there. I don't think he expected to blow him away. But in fact, that is going to make it even more difficult for Jalabert to stay at the front of this race.
Well, we've still got 5 more climbs after this to come, including the climb of La Redoute, which is a real steep climb. It requires a very low gear. And this is the moment the elastic snapped. Little acceleration by Jalabert, and the flag is out from Garzelli.
Garzelli maybe overheating a bit there. He had a big thermal jacket on as well, and you can see just a while back Jalabert started stripping himself down to be as light as possible, and the big attacks now, Phil, starting to come in the group behind. The man in second position there is Peter Farazijn, rides for the Cofidis team of Frank van den Broeke, and the Lempre rider moving up to the front here is certainly looking over his shoulder, trying to see if Sevgeny Spruk can come up behind in that group of riders.
Well, Lamprey would like a result now in these classic races. They've had a lot of men in a lot of moves, and nothing's come out of them so far this season. This is the 4th round in the World Cup, with just one more to come, the Amstel Gold Race, before they take a rest in the single-day events, and we start looking at the big tours of the season, starting, of course, with the Tour of Italy.
Big long line. Shows the fact that the main field picking up pace here. You see, you don't allow a man like Jalabert to ride off the front of a group like this and build up a lead of 1 or 2 minutes. And Phil, those clouds above Jalabert, they're looking a little black, as if there is the possibility of rain or snow coming into the race towards the end, as in fact the weatherman had told us before the start.
Well, you know, it is April in the Ardennes, and these mountains, well, the hills really, but they do see many weather changes.
In fact, just as this crash, there's a crash happened that came over race radio there, and in fact we've gone back to have a look at this. The Lamprey rider at the front is attacking. He's being followed here by Peter Farazijn, and Axel Merckx has gone down on the ground there. Axel was obviously a little bit too close. They moved across the road, and that's caused a bit of panic in the front of the main field.
Well, that's a bit embarrassing for Axel. Looked like it might have been his own fault, and his dad's had to commentate on that, because we're on the climb of the Côte de Rosier here. 70 kilometres to go to the finish. Andrimont is the location of the race. I can see Michael Bogart's jersey down there, also on form, riding for Holland, and Rabobank, of course.
It's a great season so far. A complete domination of Paris-Nice by the Rabobank team, and obviously the end winner going to Michael Bogart. But the red, white and blue jersey at the front of the race is champion of France, Laurent Jalabert, trying to do an epic ride here. This is a race that has always evaded him. He's won the Flèche Wallonne in the past, and this is one of the most suitable races, I feel, for Laurent Jalabert. It's his kind of climbs, it's his kind of temperament. You have to be a courageous rider, but his tactics leave something to be desired.
Well, he would love somebody to come and give him a hand here, that's obvious, but he's ridden the man off his wheel, and if he's that tired, there doesn't seem much point in waiting for Garzelli. He may be backpedaling a little bit. He may decide now whether he should wait for that lead group, which is rather large. Had it been a group of maybe 5 or 6 riders, he might well have sat up and waited, but it isn't. It's quite a big peloton here, so he's in a bit of a mess, frankly, right now. Laurent Jalabert doesn't quite know what to do. This is Massimo Codol from Italy, new boy on the Lamprey Daking team, playing the workhorse and keeping everybody in touch with Jalabert just now.
Peter Farazijn of Cofidis in second position, one of the Belgian riders brought into the Cofidis squad from France over the winter period, just to strengthen them so that at least there would be somebody capable of helping Frank Vandenbroek in the latter parts of these classics. Vandenbroek obviously looking to put in a good performance today, although still Cofidis not too happy about the fact that he rode Paris-Roubaix last week. The gap now, Phil, has gone out to 1 minute and 1 second for Jalabert, and there's a split in the group.
Well, this young man's doing a good bit of and there's Garzelli just slipped back in, so they've caught Garzelli already, as Axel Merckx looks okay after his crash. 10th in the Tour de France. Oh dear me, it's not his day. He's dropped his drinking bottle now.
Axel doesn't look too hurt at all. I think he'd be more embarrassed than anything else, knowing that at the finish line his dad's commentating on this on TV. I wonder what he's got to say about that.
We might find out later on, but right now he's got onto the group here. Looks okay. There's a lot of Mapei boys up here, because apart from Axel Merckx, André Noe is the other rider just behind him. This is the pressure time now, because the hills come thick and fast all the way to the finish, and it really does wear down the legs, and that's why I can't believe this man has gone out on a suicide mission. We're going over the top of the Côte de Rosier now, and the snow is up here.
We're in fact not too far from the highest point of Belgium, the Côte de Barrac-Fretur at 700 metres, only 2,000 feet above sea level, but in the winter time you can actually go cross-country skiing in this area.
Well, there's the group down there, and led by Lamprey Dakin at the moment. Jalabert out on his own and being, well, I can't say he's been left out there to fry, because I think it's pretty chilly. Here is how Axel Merckx loses his drinking bottle. Crashes to one side, he has a little look at it and thinks, oh dear. I think that was the word he used.
Over the summit of the Côte de Rosier for the main group, and in second position there you can see that the world champion Oscar Kamenzin being led up there by his teammate. His teammate on this occasion is Massimo Codol, a new rider on the Lamprey squad, and Jalabert riding sensibly. The fact that he's got a long way to go, he hasn't forgotten the fact that he does need to eat and does need to keep his energy levels topped up, but this is a very difficult task to ask a man in a race like Liege Bastogne Liege to ride on your own all the way to the finish, because there are still a lot of big teams in that group behind who will organise a chase behind a man like Jalabert.
Well, the other professionals must be thinking he really is out to shoot himself in the foot here today. 68 kilometres to go. Sorry about the odd bits of picture breakup, but the atmospherics are causing those. And Jalabert would love some help, and it's simply not coming his way. As we go further back down the road, everybody decides now it's time to take on food. This rider here is Pascal Chanteur up in this group. Behind him is the world champion Kamazin. One rider, it looks like, from Once trying to slow down the reaction, but apart from that, there's nothing happening up here now.
For the moment, it's still a very big group here in Liege Bastogne Liege, and I don't feel the splits will come this year, Phil, until we actually get to the Côte de la Redoute. They hit that climb with around about 30 kilometers left to go to the finish, and it's a steep climb along the side of the motorway where the big names finally come to the front and really put the hammer down.
And now they're fanning out across the road and nobody wanting to take up the chase, so the Map 8 boys are just keeping the pace up nicely. And this is Cedric Vassar in the Crédit Agricole colours. No sign, I'm sorry to say, of Chris Boardman in this group. It is a big group though, and we haven't seen everybody in it, as the gap has now moved up to 1 minute 6 seconds. It's hardly a gap at all. Garzelli came back into this group a few minutes ago, so there's only one man up front, and that's Laurent Jalabert, the champion of France, who isn't racing in France at the moment, which is something of a shame.
Big pressure on the front by Mappé. Although Bartoli doesn't seem to have come to the front very often in the race so far today, Phil, they're obviously still riding in defence of his chance of taking the hat-trick, the winner last year and the year before of this event. He is certainly going to try and go for it in the final couple of climbs. Last year he waited until the Côte de Saint-Tillemont to launch his attack. This year he might wait just a little bit later, because I reckon he's still pretty tired after that win in Flèche-Wallonne, which was an incredible performance, leaping away so far from the finish in those terrible conditions.
Well, he certainly won't attempt to emulate what Jalabert is doing just now. Few riders would expect to hold this lot off for very long. They have a tourist ride here called Tilth Bastogne Tilth, which is a slightly reduced distance of the Liege Bastogne Liege. It packs out with touring cyclists, which of course they all develop into a cycle race by the time you get back to the finishing line. It uses the same climbs as well.
Jalabert picking his way around these corners. He's ridden this course many times over the past, and he's always wanted to win Liege Bastogne Liege, and today he's trying to build up as big a lead as possible before he gets to the Côte de la Redoute, because once he gets there you can be certain that there's going to be a big response behind. Riders like Van den Broek, Micheli Bartley, they'll come to the front and start to launch the attacks, and that's where the race is going to happen, I reckon, today.
Well, the former world #1 removed from the summit by Mikela Bartoli. This is Vassar, in fact, who's trying to get across to him now, so he's gone by himself. At least I don't think anybody behind. So Vassar, who made his name in the Tour de France 2 years ago when he got the yellow jersey, and now trying to catch up with Laurent Jalabert. Now Jalabert would welcome his arrival, I'm sure of that.
One Frenchman chasing another Frenchman. Vassar waited till they'd gone over the summit of the climb, and he's hoping to take a few risks on the descent and bridge the gap to Jalabert. The gap at the top of the climb was 1 minute and 6 seconds, and that's going to be a difficult gap to bridge, because I don't reckon Cedric Vassar's form is actually all that good at the moment. He's building himself up to be in peak condition later in the season for the Tour de France, but he is getting down this descent pretty rapidly.
This is the other type of cyclist that chooses this particular classic and the Flèche-Wallonne with the hills, more the style of Marco Pantani and the likely winners of the Tour de France, rather than the famous single-day classic riders like Johan Museeuw and the riders who've done so well in the flatter courses over the cobblestones. But Cedric Vassar fits into this category for Liege Bastogne Liege, and he's done well to get off the front, but he now doesn't seem to be going anywhere. We need a swing round to the right and see where the rest of the race is, I think.
Interesting to note that Marco Pantani decided not to come up to Belgium to ride Flèche-Wallonne and Liege Bastogne Liege, because this race is usually the first time that we get a chance to see the riders who are preparing to ride races like the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France, the climbers. Miguel Indurain always used to ride this as one of his first races, then go on to take part in the Amstel Gold Race, the first test over the longer distances. But Vassar, realising he's not getting too much advantage, he's looked back a couple of times here as we follow him around this corner here. He's not managed to break the stranglehold or break the elastic on the main field behind.
And he leans into that corner, takes it very wide indeed. There's the group he's left, and again still a lot of speed in those legs down there as we race through the trees, which are barely showing the signs of spring because we're so high up and it's a bit chilly, and it looks as though they've wound him in, so it's all over. So Vassar has been caught by the advance party, and only Jalabert out front now.
Big teammate here for the Mappé squad, Luca Shinto, used to ride for the MG team, a real workhorse, a former winner of the Tour de Langkawi himself. Right up there as well with him is Micheli Bartley. The speed now and urgency starting to come into the front of this main field.
But it just shows you how well Jalabert must be going to hold them off. It's 1:28 is the latest gap.
Well, that's a pretty impressive performance by him, because the main field has been stretched out over the last 5 or 10 kilometers. The pressure is certainly on as Jalabert goes through the feeding station here. He will get more and more encouragement from the fact that they haven't started to close down on his gap, and he's going to keep going like this now and ride and try and build up as big an advantage as possible, and hope that when the main field go through the feeding station here, there's a general slowing down as everybody stops to pick up their bags.
Another big name not in the Deutsche Telekom team today is Jan Ullrich as well. He's still having his problems bringing himself back onto form as he continues to ride in the rear bunches of the stage races, which is a shame, as he heads up towards the final preparation for the Tour de France.
The next climb on the horizon as they go through the town of La Glaise here is going to be the Côte de l'Orsay. Not a very difficult climb, but one that in fact takes the course back over towards the west. They head then over towards the main road and then up towards the Côte de la Redoute. Big urgency on the front now, Phil. It's definitely Mapei who've decided the time is enough. Left Jalabert out there long enough to stew. They want to try and close it down and bring the race all together when they get to the final climbs of the stage. And starting all of that is going to be the Côte de la Redoute. Once they get to the Côte de la Redoute, the hills come thick and fast after that, and there's some very difficult ones.
And the riders stripping off instead of taking on food here, throwing their overcoats away because it is getting a little bit warmer. But it's not just the heat now, they're going to make it warmer with the pace as well. And the big climb of La Redoute, which starts outside the little town of Remuchon, and then it's very, very steep. There'll be a huge crowd waiting too to see the riders over the top of that. And it looks like the Mapei boys are confident that Bartoli can do the double, because they try to pull him back into contention.
Lucas Shinto on the front, a very good friend of Max Chiandri. He's really putting the pressure on. Another one of those rare riders these days who completely devote themselves to the team. They don't think about their own performances. They give everything up, every chance of victory for themselves to try and make sure that the team can win. And he's switched across again. Another of the big changes this winter to come along to the Mapei squad. He was brought in with Michele Bartoli as one of his faithful lieutenants.
Still a very heavy, unmanageable group. After we go over the Côte de l'Orsay, which is 4.4 kilometers long, we then move on to the valley and down to Remuchon, and then we climb the Côte de la Redoute, and that's only 2.2 kilometers, but it is a brute and it hurts. And we're back through the feed station here for this group of riders as well now.
Different colour of jerseys coming to the front now, the orange and white jerseys of Rabobank. They're obviously thinking about the performance of Rolf Sorensen here. This is the race route that the riders face, and this is in fact the route on the way back. And as Phil said earlier, 9 of the climbs are in the final 100 kilometres, finishing off with the Côte de Ornay, the Côte de Sartillemont, and the real sting in the tail introduced just 2 years ago, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas.
Hill number 10. And at the moment we're heading for hill number 6 on the map, the Côte de l'Orsay. And Laurent Jalabert, I can't believe he planned this attack, and I can't make any sense of it. It must be confusing the riders too. They haven't improved on him at all. He's still over a minute ahead. As we look here at Lucas Shinto, I saw him win the Tour of Langkawi a couple of years ago. It was the second edition of that event, and he doesn't win many races. He was coming back from injury at the time. Andre Noah, they're the workhorses now, and it looks as though we've got also there Gabriele Massaglia, who is also riding now, but he's in the lamprey colours.
A lot of riders from Oncé moving to the front here now, thinking about trying to organise some kind of blocking technique.
Solano going through there, so it's good to see him up there. Look at the faces there, Paul. The pace is now on. Look at the gaps forming as the riders can't hold the wheels here.
Serious pressure on the front of that main field, because the group now starting to split into 3 or 4 different sections, and all of that is being done at the front by one man at the moment. That's Lucas Shinto from the Mapei squad, and in fact if these riders aren't too careful, they're going to lose out at the feeding station.
And here's Shinto now at the front, still keeping the pressure on those pedals. And you can see the wind coming from the right there, and it split the bunch at the minute. 62 kilometers still to go.
Andrea Noe in second position, thinking, oh, I wonder when this guy's going to swing off, then it's going to be my turn to go to the front. It is very difficult riding for the big teams because, you know, on a number of occasions during the year you have to go to the front and ride like a man possessed. You've got to dig very, very deep into your reserves and realize that the effort you put in may well be only over 200 kilometers, and then all you can do is just clear off and go to the finish.
Mark Lutz was the Rabobank rider we saw there, number 40. The Rabo boys have got some great riders here today. Martin Den Bakker and Rolf Sorensen, Leon Van Bon, of course Michael Bogart and Nicky Ebersold and Marcus Zeberg, all likely riders to be in the finale of this event today. It's sort of getting it back together again. It's hurt one or two, but they're crawling their way back into a nice compact peloton. Was 128, but it's now back to 116, so that pacemaking by Lucas Shinto has had an effect. It's starting to come back against Laurent Jalabert.
That's not surprising when you look at the long thin line of the peloton here. It's one man following one man and several big gaps starting to appear. These are the position of the World Cup at the moment. André Schmiel is the leader with 152 points ahead of Van Petegem, and that victory last week by Andrea Taffy moves him up into third spot. Another Belgian, Frank van den Broek, in fourth.
Further down the list there, Franco Ballerini still on the frame, and he would like to score a bit better, I think, than that. He's been such a consistent bike rider over the years of the World Cup. Looking down to the twists and turns of the Ardennes, the trees are late in bursting forth for spring. That peloton is somewhere in the region of 50 riders strong now. It's been getting bigger and bigger. Although, having said that, Paul, it might well have lost a few just there. Look a bit smaller.
A few riders got tailed off the back going through the feeding station there. Anybody who's got slightly sore legs may well have taken a right-hand turn there and looked for the Soigneur's vehicle and a quick lift back to the finish line, because they know what's in store after this. After the Côte de l'Orsay, they've got the Côte de la Redoute, and then if your legs are sore, you've got a very difficult job trying to get up there.
And it's not all downhill into the finish either, because although we do drop down towards Liège again and up to Ons, where the race will finish, there are one or two hills waiting on the way. This rider here is Lucas Shinto. He's got himself back on the front. Terrific workhorse, and not a big winner. Rarely gets his chance to win, but like a lot of riders in the Mapei boys, knows exactly how his job is.
Lucas Shinto's a big, strong boy on the front of this group. He's really powering it along. And the thing is, in his mind, he's not thinking about getting to the finish line in Ons, just outside Liège. What he's thinking about is getting himself to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute. Then his job is done. He's then just got to cruise to the finish line. Jalabert still on his own at the front of the race, but there is a big reaction behind, and I feel sure that the next time we get a time check with 57 kilometers to go, it's going to be inside the 1 minute mark, because although Jalabert is riding well, he's a fantastic rider, number 2 currently in the world, the champion of France. It's impossible to hold off against a big field bowling along like that.
But he is riding so well, and he makes it look so deceptively easy, and yet you've seen the faces on the chase behind, and they're not really getting into his lead just yet. He's such a remarkable stylist, Laurent Jalabert.
Very strong rider. You see how he sits fairly high up, fairly upright on his machine, but the sheer power coming out of those thighs, and he's really very much a classics rider, an explosive man. He's got the power to handle these short, steep climbs of the Ardennes. Tactically, normally he plays it to perfection, but he always seems to get a little too excited about Liege Bastogne Liege. This is one of the races he wants to win. Those are his performances over the last couple of years. Last year second, 97 second, 1995 fourth, so he likes this race.
Well, you could say that again. Well, of course the seconds are behind Bartoli, and Bartoli back in this chase group at the moment. Number 6 is André Noah, another rider who's really come good. He's been around a little while now, but he usually rides a good Tour of Italy. Lucas Shinto there, itching to get by again on the Rabobank rider, which is Mark Lutz. And Credit Agricole now have 2 riders in this bunch up near the front. Pascal Chanteur. It's a lovely day if you're sitting in a car, but it's still chilly out there, as these riders now are making sure that Jalabert doesn't slip them by too far, because they can't give a man of his quality a very big lead.
Sorry about the picture breakup. That's because of the link from the motorbike cameras to the helicopter and then down to the finish line. That corner Jalabert was about to take there was underneath the railway line, and then he starts immediately to go up on the Côte de l'Orsay.
And these riders shortly to arrive at the same point, of course. Still the gap is around 1 minute 16 seconds.
The leader of the Casino team for today, and that's Laurent Roux, came across to Casino during the winter changes from one team to the other. He used to ride for TVM and now very comfortably sitting at the back of this big train on the front of the main field. He's keeping himself to the front of the bunch there because he realizes the Côte de l'Orsay is coming up. The advantage for Laurent Jalabert at the bottom of the Côte de l'Orsay now 1 minute and 10 seconds.
And the board there indicating 11 riders in that chase crew, but I think that was wrong. It must have been sort of an old marker because it's bigger than that. Jalabert committed now to something I don't believe he wanted to do, and that's break away at this stage of the race. He should not have shed himself with Garzelli, even if it had meant slowing down, but the speed Garzelli went back to the main field, he was either realising his plight or he really is very tired. There's the gradients, 12% on the Côte de l'Orsay. It's fairly long, 3 kilometres, and it takes them up to 200 metres rather, above sea level. It's quite high.
From the top of this climb, Laurent Jalabert will face a 15-kilometre ride to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, and if he can hold on to his 1 minute advantage to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, he will then see a group of riders coming up to join him. Probably the favourites for the overall victory at the end, because the Côte de la Redoute is really one of the steepest climbs on the course. Its average gradient is 8.3%, but in certain parts it's a lot steeper than that.
Still Andre Noah setting the pace at the front. It's coming down reasonably rapidly now, 52 seconds it is, lots there. Rolf Sorensen also getting in on the picture now, the world champion in the white jersey of Oscar Kammerzind. So strong when he won his title last year, and then he hadn't won a race till then, of course, so he came out and won the Tour of Lombardy after that too, to prove himself to be truly a worthy world champion.
A few problems with the team though, his non-selection for the Tour de France obviously stinging him a little, and that's why he at the end of the season gave him a fairly good going away present before he swapped over teams. That victory at the World Championships backed up with the Tour of Lombardy. Jalabert now on the upper slopes of the Côte de l'Orsay, and the big names, Phil, in that main field starting to move towards the front. They're realising now we're coming to the very crucial part of Liege Bastogne Liege, the oldest bike race, the oldest professional bike race that there is, Le Doyen they call it, meaning the old one. And Jalabert dearly would love to get a victory here, because this is a race that the French really do appreciate. 12% in this corner at the moment, and Jalabert still doesn't look under pressure. He's riding very sensibly, riding within himself, not really over the limit.
Well, he's a remarkable bike rider, the world #1 until this year, and he's so consistent for the whole year. That's why he stays on top of the world rankings, but Bartley's got him off at the moment. Now see how his summer goes. Not sure where
55 seconds. So Laurent Jalabert knows now that they're starting to accelerate behind, they're starting to pull into his advantage, and he can only hope now that he can survive to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute.
Well, first of all, he's got to cross the Côte de l'Orsay, and then, as Paul has said, he's got that long charge down to the little village of Revelon before he starts climbing away on the La Redoute climb, which climbs up on the main Liège-Charleroi motorway. He's not a man of the mountains, he's not a recognised huge climber, Laurent Jalabert, but once he gets his rhythm and they leave him alone, he's a very, very strong bike rider.
He's had a great season so far this year with 2 overall wins, one in the Semaine Catalane and one in the Tour of Pays Basque, bringing his total to 5 victories so far this season.
Now let's have a look back at the pack. I'm not too sure why we're seeing this again, but there's been an attack from the field, I think, as the riders start to break clear. This could be the Oncé team. Is this André Perron going clear?
Strangely enough, André Perron is in fact attacking off the front of the group. Now I find that a strange move. Perron's tactics really are rather bizarre. He's got Laurent Jalabert at the front of the race, 55 seconds ahead, and Perron, riding for the same Oncé squad, is trying to go out to the front. Now that will inspire the group there to pick up their pace and ride towards catching the leader on the road, Laurent Jalabert.
Well, that is very confusing, but anyway, André Perron is trying to get clear, and if they've got 2 Oncé in the lead, well, who knows what might happen. Nobody's reacted to Perron just yet.
Still sitting on the front, it's the white jersey of the Mapei squad. Mapei are very happy just to set the pace. They want to try and keep the race sensible until they get to Côte de la Redoute. The gap still coming down 51 seconds. They're slowly starting to eat into the lead of Laurent Jalabert. Two Cofidis riders moving to the front of the group there. The third place rider is Farazine and the fourth place rider Van den Broeke.
Well, Jalabert is making them work, and work probably a lot harder than they would have liked to here. And it still doesn't make sense as to why he's gambling on such a long attack to the finish, because he's been out to 1.5 minutes approximately, but he's now back to inside a minute. So clearly, unless he sprouts wings on La Redoute, he is not going to get away from this group.
And if he's not careful, La Redoute might leap up and smack him in the face like a good boxer, because it's a very difficult climb to handle, especially if you've been riding alone for 30 kilometers beforehand. But Jalabert doesn't seem to be too worried about that at the moment. He's settling into his own pace, a pace that he's comfortable with. And there you can see, in fact, Perron has come to 55 seconds down on Laurent Jalabert, his leader, and 1:05 to the main field. But that's a really bizarre move by Perron.
He's 10 seconds clear of this bunch now, and still trying to get forward. Jalabert continues to set his pace. He's content to do that. He concentrates. There's a rumour, in fact, that he may not be able to defend his national championship in June this year, because he has so far not gone to France for the compulsory medical tests, which all the French riders must take now before they're allowed to race in the national championships.
Jalabert has been very outspoken against the French regime throughout the winter months. Not happy with the way that the French are organising the controls of the riders. He feels happy to submit to the UCI controlling system, but he's definitely at loggerheads with the French Federation.
Regrouping of the field. Well, it certainly looks like 50 riders actually now, as they've all come back together again, and I presume that Perron is still just out in front. We haven't had a camera down there with him yet, but anyway, if he's not, then he's back in that group of 50. But Jalabert certainly out in front, inside a minute now.
The big problem Jalabert could have later in the season is not only the fact that he won't be able to ride the French national championships and defend his title because he hasn't been submitting himself to the French Federation controls. He will not get into the national team for the World Championships, and that would be a bitter blow for this man, who himself is a former world champion at the time trials.
Yes, a lot more important to him, of course, than winning the National Road Race Championship yet again. Credit Agricole up near the front of the rides as well. Still, nobody has taken command of this bunch yet. There's still too many riders here, I think, and it could well be, Paul, that it won't see any change until we start the climb of La Redoute. Then obviously the strong men will be projected out.
Well, once we go over the summit, although the main field was shown the summit of the climb, the Côte de l'Orsay doesn't finish quite as easily as that. This is Laurent Jalabert's standings in the UCI World Rankings over the last few years. Started off at 158th, but from 1995 he was first through 1997, and he dropped down at the end of last year to second place behind Micheli Bartley. But this man has certainly been a big, strong rider. There's his advantage now. It's stretched out a bit more, Phil, to 1:05.
And he's making it look so easy. These boys look to be labouring, but he certainly isn't.
They're certainly waiting till they get over the summit of this climb and then down into the valley road, and then the chase will start to organise itself again, and they will naturally pick up speed along the 15-kilometre stretch from the Côte de l'Orsay to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute.
And somebody's accelerated off the front. I think it might be Niki Ebersol who's gone, the champion of Switzerland, going clear. Nobody's reacted from him yet.
That's a surprise attack by Niki Ebersol, leaping out there. He's obviously hoping to pick up Andrea Perron, who's stuck there in the middle of nowhere at the moment. Good rider has been brought across to the Rabobank squad. A very good sprinter indeed. Won a stage at the Tour of Switzerland last year, then went on to take the Swiss National Championships.
So Ebersol climbing clear now on the Côte de l'Orsay, and Jalabert heading up towards the summit of that climb. And in fact, this little group, Paul, coming up now, so we must have caught Perron because he's here again and he's coming out of the pack. I don't know who the others are at the moment, but Ebersol is certainly in front, and one of these two is Andrea Perron. As the field regroups behind, they're very tenacious, aren't they? An attack now by the Cofidis rider. It looks like Peter Farazine.
Looks very much like the style of Peter Farazijn, and you can see Once taking a big interest now in the race that's happening at the front here, trying to protect the advantage of Laurent Jalabert, but it may be a bit too late. They should have been working to try and protect that lead earlier on, to try and slow down the organised chase by the Mapei squad. And once again, it's Axel Merckx coming out of the group, trying to get across to that group.
And gets across he does. Those long thin legs of his always look as though they need straightening out a little bit, because he rides his saddle quite low. Axel Merckx, 10th in his first Tour de France last year. I know a lot of riders dropped out, but that was still an excellent ride by him. Should give him some confidence for this year. Now back up with the leader, Laurent Jalabert, still riding in his crouch position, looking a little bit more determined now than he was before, and I think possibly for the first time he's actually feeling the pressure of the race. Just coming up towards the top of the climb here, then he starts the descent down.
An interesting machine that Jalabert is riding, giant bicycles, carbon fibre machine with those very impressive fork blades in the front there, making this a pretty aerodynamic machine, and almost flat, the seat pin there going up into the saddle, trying to make this one of the top bikes around. I personally would find it a bit strange riding a machine with a sloped tube, but that seems to be the pattern that a lot of the constructors are going for this year, because basically it makes the frame just a little bit smaller and makes for a more rigid build.
Another quick drink, don't blame him for that. Inside a minute, still the gap here. Champion of France. I think everybody bemused as to quite what he is doing here, what tactics he thinks he's playing, and where he expects it to take him, because nobody's getting up to him, and if they do come up, it could well be quite a lot of bike riders now.
Big crowd out to watch Liege Bastogne Liege. It's a pretty easy race to come and see, because on the road down to Bastogne, in fact, the race route follows the motorway, so you can stop and see the race go by, jump onto the motorway, drive a couple of stops down and see them come by once again, and then it takes a big loop out from Bastogne over to the Côte de la Roche, and then heads its way back up, and then it's really in the final few kilometers that the climbs start to really pay, because that's when they are much more repetitive.
A minute and 2 seconds is all it is now, so he's seen it plummet, almost if he's not even looking at it right now, as he continues to keep the pressure on. This is the group now that's just over 60 seconds behind, as they continue to get what they can out and cause the counter-attacks from the field.
Again, the red and white jerseys of Rabobank moving to the front to try and stir it up, help the Mapei riders. Axel Merckx coming up again. Axel's really riding with incredible determination today. He realises today he has a responsible role in the possible hat-trick for Micheli Bartley. And at the back of the group, everybody getting ready now for the next approach. They're calling up the team cars, trying to make sure that they keep topped up with bottles. One of the riders coming through there, in fact, from Mapei, was Shinto. We saw him at the front of the group just a little while ago. Once they got over the summit of the climb, he put his brakes on, went back to the team car to fill up with water and food, and they will take it up and distribute it amongst through the team.
Well, the way this bunch is riding here, it's showdown on La Redoute, and until we get there, nothing much is going to happen. It's still nibbling at 1 minute approximately. Paolo Bettini here has been back to the food wagon, and he's bringing the stuff up to the riders.
That little green packet, a lot of riders always ask me what is in that little green packet. It's in fact a product called Extran. It's made in Holland, and it's equivalent to about 6 slices of bread. Very good, quick way of getting energy into the body. Inside
50 kilometers to go. So they're all waiting for La Redoute. It's the ridge in the distance, and it is going to be the showdown today. We are going to see a lot of attacks on that climb, Paul. We've got to.
That's where the race has got to be decided. It's very rare for a group more than 15 or 20 riders to go over the top of the Côte de la Redoute together, because if you're not in the first 10 or 15 at the bottom, a lot of difficulty is had by riders trying to move forward, and that's the climb where in the past Micheli Bartley has launched his attacks and split the race to pieces.
And I wonder how he's feeling. He'll know in those legs after that long escape to win Flèche Wallonne. He's obviously the man in the best position to do the double just at the moment, but I'm not too sure he has the form. Atrocious conditions. Now, is this Rolf Aldag coming back into play here? He's having a great year. No, it's Jacques, who was in that early chase group and didn't get across to the two leaders when Garzelli was up with Jalabert.
Poor Lucas Shinto back to the front. 1 minute he was back in the cars giving drinks to all the boys, and now he's on the front of the main field again. This guy is a super domestique, a rare breed of rider, just like Sean Yates, who devoted much of his career to working for other people like Lance Armstrong and also people like Phil Anderson. He gets to the front, does his job, and just gets on with it as much as possible. His next most important thing on the race today is the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute. After that, it's up to the big boys.
Well, Laurent is just getting himself back into time trial mode here now. He knows what it likes to win the world title, and the pictures aren't going to hold there, so we're going to have to go back and have a look at the reforming of this big group here. Now racing across virtually valley roads, heading for Revelon. Delightful little village in the Ardennes, but unfortunately for the race, the only way out is up the La Redoute climb.
And unfortunately for the riders too, the only way is up. It's a big speed in the main field. You can see the big long line. There's a couple of riders from Once moving to the front now, just to keep an eye on affairs and hoping that their man Laurent Jalabert can conserve a certain amount of his advantage. And over the last 10 kilometers his advantage has hovered at the 1 minute mark. It came underneath at 1 point to 55 seconds on the Côte de l'Orsay, but since then, Phil, they've never really managed to pull anything back on Jaja.
And here he is, the sun on his back as well now. This beautiful little village too he's passing through, and absolutely idyllic cycling countryside in the Belgian summer, but it's a bit chilly in the Belgian spring. These are the climbs that are remaining. The next one is the La Redoute itself, and then the Côte d'Ance will take the riders up to the finishing line. That's a nasty sting in the tail.
Everybody's moving up and down this group at the moment, trying to get themselves into an ideal position, because they know shortly somebody's going to come to the front of this group and organise the chase completely. It's almost like leading out a bunch sprint at the end, because everybody wants to come into that final corner at the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute in the first 4 or 5 positions. And I'm pretty certain that the way they've been showing themselves so far, that team is going to be Mapei today. They've got a strong team. Most of the riders are still in this group, but interestingly enough, the man who is leading the World Cup overall this morning, André Schmiel, is not in this group, and he's in fact been left somewhat behind. He did start this event and was hoping to try and get himself a few points in the World Cup rankings, but unfortunately this circuit really, Phil, doesn't fall into his abilities.
Well, really, it's not his favourite course. He's more a man for the cobbles of Roubaix than he is for the hills of the Ardennes, but as leader of the World Cup, probably felt obliged to put in an appearance today. Laurent Jalabert still time trialling, still living dangerously and dangling out front, and still confusing us all as to why a man of the quality of Jalabert has gone on such an attack by himself. Look at the chase now, Paul. Well,
it is the Mapei team as we expected. 41 seconds now, the advantage of Laurent Jalabert, and the order's gone out in Team Mapei. Come to the front, get it organised. On the front is Gianni Farazin, followed by Lucas Shinto, and in third place Andrea Noe. The man who will be looking after Micheli Bartley in the final few kilometres here is certainly going to be Paolo Bettini. Very similar in style, very similar in stature to the leader of the Mapei squad, and you can see the big power now coming up, and it's going to be pretty soon we'll be seeing the shape of Laurent Jalabert on the horizon.
And I presume that's why Bettini has not been sent to the front to chase down Jalabert, but they're keeping him fresh for La Redoute. Maybe Bartley wants this man back in the pack before the climb begins, so he's free then to plan his own attack. 46 kilometres to go to the finish, and the La Redoute climb now is not very far away. We'll go down into Revelon, and then we go through the back streets of that delightful little town, and then we climb away.
Jalabert fairly comfortable on his machine, sitting on the top of the handlebars there, gripping onto the brake levers, keeping the pressure on as much as possible, taking a lot of wind into his face, and not the most aerodynamic position, but he's obviously trying to keep himself as comfortable as possible, realizing there's a lot of tough climbs yet to come. The race average so far 40.75 kilometers an hour, so this has been pretty rapid when you think of the climbs we've been over.
Very quick indeed. The 3 riders now from Mapei have been told to get out and do it, but we could be on course here to witness the fastest Liege Bastogne Liege in history, thanks to the effort being made here by Laurent Jalabert. Jalabert looks over his shoulder now. I think he's seen them coming. It could be the end of the line for this breakaway, and not soon enough, I would suspect, because he still has a chance to recover for the climb of La Redoute. Jalabert definitely has eased up. There's the service car, the neutral service car, so I think you're going to see Laurent slip into the main field here. So the chase down by Mappé has proved worthwhile. They're bringing back Laurent.
A lot of these riders in this group have got to say a big thank you to Team Mappé for the organisation they put in at the front of the race. It's not by accident they're the #1 team in the world. They have proved over the last few years that they can consistently ride well in these World Cup races, these one-day races which they specialise in. They've wanted to be competitive in the big stage races as well, but it's so difficult nowadays. And there's another attack coming from an Once rider there, so Jalabert must be almost caught, unless that's another tactical error by our friend Andrea Perron.
Well, there's no doubt this race is on a record schedule. We've only had one Liege Bastogne Liege break the 40 kilometres an hour barrier, and that was last year with Micheli Bartley. And at the moment, it's going even faster than that. And there is Jalabert. He's caught. And we're on the sort of main road approach to Revelon now. And the field have got themselves back into order as they all come back together again. Not far now from the switch over to the climb up to La Redoute.
An incredible piece of work done by the Mappé squad to bring Laurent Jalabert back into the fold. That's a very strange move by Jalabert. He must have known he was going to get caught. There's Oscar Kamenzin, the world champion, in the white jersey with the stripe across it, moving to the front as well. And now, Phil, we're going to get a chance to see who the real contenders are going to be in this event, because they're all moving to the front. It's almost like a bunch sprint down there at the moment. A lot of people taking risks to try and get into that little narrow road at the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute in the first 4 or 5 places.
Well, I guarantee Mappé will be in there somewhere. This team is absolutely formidable, and the nice thing about the Mappé team is that they are prepared to race in all of the races around the world. They turn up in the Tour of Langkawi in Malaysia, they go out to the United States, and it's nice to see they're not afraid to take part in all the events. There we are, Hawaii. That's the next village before we get to Revelon, and 43 kilometres still to go.
And it's always the white jerseys on the front, the Mappé squad, keeping the pressure on, continuing with the work that's been theirs over the last 20 kilometres. Now what they want to do is keep the speed high to stop their man Micheli Bartley getting swamped on the approach to the bottom of the climb to the Côte de la Redoute. Incredible work being done by Lucas Shinto, followed by Andrea Noe. And the next man moving up to the front here is also expecting to find the shoulder of Micheli Bartley coming up to him shortly.
Because that'll be little Bettini. And this is Farazin coming through now. That's an interesting little seeing a lot of different riders here than what we normally see in the classics, as they now know that they've got to race through to the climb itself and then decide. And our pictures are not behaving themselves totally at the moment, but we're seeing now that the temperature has gone from 0 up to 11 degrees. That's about 52 degrees Fahrenheit. So they'll feel a little bit warmer, and guaranteed once the climb starts it's going to be quite hot. Right, that's where we're heading for, the Côte de la Redoute. It is 5.7 kilometres away from the race now, so once we leave this town there's a little bit of open countryside, and then we're into Revelon.
Serious organisation by the #1 team in the world at the moment. 4 of the first 4 places are taken by the Mappé squad, and moving up into 5th spot there, I would expect to see Micheli Bartley. Wearing number 3, Farazin is really giving it everything, followed here by Noe, followed by Shinto, and moving further forward, Axel Merckx is having a great race today because he too has moved forward.
Well, the whole team is here now. Merckx says he doesn't care who wins as long as it's a member of the Mappé team today. And they're all throwing the weight behind this move now. This is Figueres who's got... No, it's not. Sorry, Paul. It's Andre Noah again now, who's got himself back to the front. Figueres was the rider, had that problem quite a way back now. They're saying there are 48 riders in this bunch. It's a big bunch to come down to the narrow streets of Revelon.
Well, of those 4 or 5 riders from Mappé on the front there, most of them will actually give up the ghost when they get to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, because for them the finish of today's Liege Bastogne Liege is at the bottom. They have to make sure that Micheli Bartley and Paolo Bettini get around that corner in 1st and 2nd position. Now we're starting to see the Cofidis riders moving to the front as well, and that in fact is Frank Vandenbroeke using his former teammates there to stay near the front. And there's a little sign there coming from Axel Merckx: keep out of the way because I'm coming back, I'm finished.
The movement in that bunch, they're literally fighting each other now to see the front of the bunch before we get through to Revelon. There's a few little chicanes round the back entries of the town before we start the climb under a railway bridge. As we now cross one of the delightful rivers that abound here, now we're heading down towards the La Redoute through the chicanes, and this now is a big peloton heading for the climb.
38 kilometers to go to the finish, 36 kilometers to go from the summit of the climb. The big long line is stretched out by the Mapei squad, and they will be happy to know that their man Micheli Bartley is right at the front. That's the motorway, in fact, that takes the riders up to Liège.
Well, the riders now are leaving at the little town as we now start the climb. It'll start in earnest in a few seconds' time when they go to the right here. And this is where we'll see how many people are watching Liege Bastogne Liege, because the crowd will be very dense on the summit. It looks like the domestiques and Mapei, they're now going to go as fast and for as long as they can, and then can Micheli Bartoli take over from them, because this is the most crucial stage now of the event.
The big names moving to the front too. Axel Merckx has recovered now, taking over the leading position. The red, white and blue there of the champion of Holland is also very much to the front of this group, and also Frank van den Broek, the man that the Belgians are hoping is going to become the new Eddy Merckx.
And the main road there been turned into a car park to watch Liege Bastogne Liege come through. Interesting to see Michael Bogart has moved up, Paul. He's fourth wheel at the minute, and also I think it's David Revelon come through as well.
Moving into second place behind Axel Merckx is Micheli Bartley. This is his climb. He's hoping that this is going to be his race. That is Revelon on the left-hand side, Michael Bogart in the red, white and blue on the right-hand side. All the big names now coming to the front, and in fact there you can just see off to the left-hand side of Axel Merckx, tucked in out of the wind there, is Frank van den Broek.
Well, Axel Merckx is riding superbly here and clearly committed to his team captain and not thinking so much of himself. Well, his father's been here as well, Liege Bastogne Liege. He won it 5 times, and now Axel is trying to help his team leader get into a good position to win it for the 3rd time.
Stuck in the middle of that group there, Oscar Kamenzin moving forward, defending his champion's jersey quite admirably. It seems this year as if the curse of the rainbow jersey has not affected Oscar Kamenzin. He moves up there very easily around the outside to bring the world champion's jersey to the front of this line, but still Axel Merckx is digging deep. He knows he's got to keep going for as long as possible to try and prevent any attacks coming from the other teams, and to try and set up the attack from Micheli Bartley, which is certain to come pretty soon.
And so is the tough part of the climb. This isn't the hardest part of the climb yet. It gets steeper than this. Kamenzin looking very impressive. Nice to see the world champion mixing it at the front of a race at this time of the year. He won his title, of course, in October last season. And watch out now, because Frank van den Broek has found the rear wheel of Micheli Bartoli, so it looks like Van den Broek also is going to be interested in what happens in the next few minutes. And watch out for Michael Bogart. He's come from the back to the front on the left of the picture.
And there it is, Bartoli's attack. That was the moment he was waiting for. He was waiting for the moment when Axel Merckx started to fail, and he leapt out of the pack just like he did on this climb last year, and the response is coming from Michael Bogart, but nobody can react to the acceleration of Micheli Bartley on a climb like this.
Oh, that's incredible the way he's accelerated away, and this is on the steeper part of the climb now. They've got it barriered this year, as Bartley now is going to try and keep this pressure on for as long as possible. It's still a little way to go to the summit. It eases, then it kicks again, and then it levels out gradually over the top. Bogart isn't like as fluid as Bartley, but he's cracking.
Well, in fact, Bartley is not the Bartley of last year, because he's not opened up the big gap as he did. And there you can see Michael Bogart is coming across the gap nice and smoothly. Also very close to the front there was the champion of Switzerland, Niki Abersold, and in 3rd position there is David Revelon.
So Micheli Bartley has given it his best shot. Bogart a little bit more laboured, but in fact is bringing the rest up to him. There's an awful lot of riders coming up towards Bartley now.
It's incredible the way he rides these climbs. Well, he's right on the bottom of his handlebars. It looks as if he's trying to sprint. We're on the steep part of the climb now, 19%. It has had the effect of breaking up that main field. There were 48 riders at the bottom, and there are a lot less now, a small group starting to form. Bartley, he looks confident. He keeps looking over his shoulders.
Van den Broek's going, he's come onto the shoulder of Bartley. Look at this for a sprint. 2 great champions side by side. They are ripping away from the field.
Well, I thought Bartley was weakening. He was just waiting to see what the reaction was going to be of the other riders in this group. As soon as he saw Van den Broek came, he accelerated very easily, and now Van den Broek taking up 1st position.
Well, Van den Broek has openly said he wants to win this race, and as long as Bartley finishes 2nd, he won't care. And now he's waited, and this is the first time we've seen him at the front. He's controlled himself. He has had a very, very good Paris-Roubaix, and now he wants to do well in Liege Bastogne Liege.
Well, that was an incredible turn of the books. It looked as if Micheli Bartley was the strongest there, but once Vandenbroek actually accelerated, Bartley was having difficulty staying on the wheel. I think the reason he rode alongside Vandenbroek when he attacked there was a psychological attempt to show him that he was the strongest man in the race. But I tell you what, Vandenbroek certainly had the big acceleration, and he's going clear over the top.
Well, look at this now. Frank Vandenbroek coming up towards the summit of the Côte de la Redoute, and now has he got Bartley on his wheel, or is he clear on his own? He must be on his own. He's taken a long look over his shoulder, and this is a fine piece of riding. He hid himself all day and he's chosen well. He even allowed Bartley to make the attack, and then he saw that Bartley wasn't the man of the previous years, and he went up alongside him and he showed some terrific strength.
In fact, Bogard is the man who's come and passed Micheli Bartley. Bartley now starting to recover as we approach the summit of the Côte de la Redoute, and he's getting onto the wheel of Michael Bogard. The gap over the top of the climb there, Phil, was 8 seconds, and Den Bakker, in fact, is coming up into 4th position on the road.
So the great battle of La Redoute not turning out quite as we expected. We really didn't expect to see Frank Vandenbroek ride away. Now, can these riders get on terms with him? The gap is not big yet, but there's a small descent here after this right-hand bend. We ride a little bit of flat, then we drop down, and then we still have 3 serious climbs which are noted, and of course the climb up to the finish. So in all, 4 climbs still to come here for all of the riders. Still a long way to go.
24 years of age, Frank Vandenbroek, wearing number 61 today, has 36 kilometers left to go to the finish, and even though he is turning out to be a classy champion, I don't see him staying this far in front towards the end. I'm certain that that group of riders behind are going to catch him before the finish.
There's the start of the descent. It's not a big descent, and then Vandenbroek, is he going to try and stay away and put himself in a position like Laurent Jalabert was in just before the start of this climb, or is he going to wait and see if he can deliver another blow later? Judging by the way he's riding, Paul, he's answered the question. He's not going to wait.
He's not going to wait, but there are 2 riders from Rabobank behind in that group with Micheli Bartley. Den Bakker on the front in 2nd place, Michael Bogard, and Bartley. Not the great Micheli Bartley of the last 2 years, because this was the climb where he laid his foundations for victory, and now he's having to seek help from the Dutch rivals from across the border. 2 riders chasing, 3 riders chasing, and there is Vandenbroek a bit further up the road. His advantage for the moment 100 meters, but this was the incredible attack by Frank Vandenbroek. He comes up alongside Micheli Bartley. Bartley tries to respond here, looks at the face of Vandenbroek, opens up the gas a little bit more just to impress the young rival.
Yeah, but it didn't work, did it? Because he thought he'd try and put the frighteners on him, but this rider just kicked again, and as soon as Bartley looked back to see if anybody was following, because he wanted the wheel there, and the answer is there was nobody following. And the Belgians cheering this man of the Ardennes to a clear lead at the top of the Côte de la Redoute.
It's amazing to see that this young man at 24 years of age has already finished 2nd in the Tour of Flanders this year. The first real attempt he's making on the World Cup, and now he's making the motions of the big attacks in Liege Bastogne Liege.
Well, that really was one of the coolest attacks by this rider. What strength now. But I can't believe he's going to hold them off, because they've reorganised that chase just behind as he now races towards the next climb of the day, which will be the Côte de Sprimont, a 1.6 kilometre climb. Now switches the gears a little bit. The yellow flag, remember, is a warning flag in Europe. It's yellow for danger. He rejoins the main road. A tight turn, little bit of continued downhill here, and a little bit of strengthening of the opposition as more riders start to come up into the attack. And it looks as though Oscar Camazin has also got himself now into this chase group. This is developing into quite a pursuit.
Pretty impressive move by Frank Vandenbroek, Phil. Over 30 kilometres still to go to the finish, and I wonder if he's thinking about the mistake in his mind now of Laurent Jalabert, who attacked with over 80 kilometres left to go to the finish in Anse, just outside Liège, and now he is building up an advantage which is hovering around about 20 seconds over a group of riders which is starting to reform behind, including the world champion Camazin, including Micheli Bartley, and his gap now 12 seconds.
Well, it's not very far, is it? And he might, you know, get brought back on the next little climb. We've got this descent here first. Here's the action behind now. Remember, it was the MAPE team that ripped the race up towards the Côte de la Redoute, and it was the Cofidis man who used their tactics against them.
Well, this group certainly has swelled. It was 3 riders over the top of the climb, but now we've got 1 or 2 more men coming up there. There is Oscar Kamenzin, the current world champion. On the front there, Paolo Bettini is the rider from the Mape squad.
And Frank Vandenbroek won't know it, but of course Bettini is really the workhorse now. They rested him early on to wait until Bartley made his move on the ladder Doot. That has now happened, and it's now Bettini who is having to give all of his energy now to try and pull his team captain back up to the race leader. Now I think he might well be starting the climb of the Sprimont here.
This is the early slopes of the Côte de Sprimont. Not a very difficult climb, actually. The riders came over this morning on their way down to Bastogne, and if Vandenbroek would just turn round a little, he'd be able to see the riders behind him. Big reaction coming from Michael Boga, trying to leap across at the top of the Côte de Sprimont. 30 kilometres to go to the finish.
And the main field behind, not looking too frisky at the moment, but Bogat is being brought back to heel here. The climb, as Paul said, isn't really steep, but it bites a little bit.
Well, there is Frank Vandenbroek. It's 1 kilometre long, 9% at the steepest part, and as you can see, it only goes up 65 metres. Now, if Vandenbroek is an excellent tactician, he will look back and see the group behind him. He will sit up and wait, and if he has got good form, because that was a pretty impressive attack, he'll wait to one of the climbs towards the finish.
Well, it's 9%, just the best part of 1 in 12, 1 in 11. And Cofidis here will be cheering all the way now, because this rider, he's put in this strong attack, but he really might be advised to just hang on a few minutes and do it again later. And he's looking over to assess whether that might be the better part of the trip.
Fantastic to see this young man reaching the maturity of becoming one of the great classic riders. Second in the Tour of Flanders, he rode a very good Paris-Roubaix, and now he's got the sense to look over his shoulder, see who's in that group behind, which is now being led by Nicky Abersold. And there are in fact 3 riders from Rabobank in this group, so they're going to be in a pretty good position to rival Mape over the final few kilometres. And Vandenbroek himself just has 1 teammate in there, and that's Peter Farazijn.
He's backpedaling at the moment on the climb, Paul. He's waiting for him to rejoin him. He's not tried to hold him off. That's a very mature decision, I think. And it's Nicky Ibersol. Here he comes, the Swiss champion for Rabobank, who's bringing the race back together again now. We're told there are 18 riders in this group, an awful big group of riders, Paul, at this stage of the Liege.
And race radio telling us that the leader of the World Cup, André Schmiel, is around about 1 minute behind this group, and nobody knows exactly where Laurent Jalabert is out on the course. Vandenbroek slipping back down the group there, just checking on who is in it. And at the front, I can tell him Micheli Bartley is looking pretty good. Udo Boltz is there in the pink and white jersey of Team Telecom. That is Mario Arts, the Lotto rider, in there. Paolo Bettini coming through. Peter Farazijn. Problem there for David Rebellin, but I would say Frank Vandenbroek is going to be very happy to have in this group Peter Farazijn.
You can bet your life. In fact, Rebellin gone back very quickly there. I wonder if he had more than just the requirement for a drink. He might have had a flat tyre. But we're looking here now at number 52, and this is Mario Ertz. Pretty good Belgian rider.
Mario Ertz had a very good ride in the Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days ago under unbelievably atrocious conditions, and I have to say he's waving the flag for Team Lotto this afternoon, because André Schmiel is a long way back. These are the riders in the race just now.
And Figueras has done well to be in this group after the bike change he took earlier on. And there's a list of good names here. Ertz is the guy at the bottom of that list. A lot of riders now will take confidence because they brought Vandenbroek back into the group, and Spruck is here. What a great season Spruck is having without any real results really, apart from of course his great finish in the Milan San Remo back in early March.
And it's nice to see in there riding for Mercatone Uno, the man with the best name in bicycle racing, I reckon, Marco Velo.
Yeah, almost as if you could not choose any other sport when you've got a name like Velo. Axel Merckx still just hanging off the back. Now, is he getting a bit tired, I wonder?
He's done an awful lot of work to try and get his teammate Micheli Bartley into an ideal position. He's with one of the second groups out on the road, the group with André Schmiel there, wearing number 51 in the white jersey for the first time of the champion of the leader of the World Cup. He wore it after Milan San Remo, lost it, and then managed to get it back again last week in Paris-Roubaix.
Well, now he's in danger of losing it again here with Jean-Luc Vandenbroek right up in that lead group. as they try to pull themselves back into action. But though, judging by the way they're riding and looking at some of the faces on these poor chaps at the back of the race, they are really suffering now. And now, is this another attack off the front?
That looks like Figueras who's come out to the front there, obviously trying to soften it up for something for Micheli Bartley to take over afterwards. Now, this young man was the under-23 champion of the world a few years ago, but there's a big reaction coming straight back. The reaction coming from the Rabobank team there, the champion of Switzerland, Abersolt. You've got to get up early in the morning to catch that young man out. And it's going to be a big rivalry now, Phil, a big fight, I reckon, between the Mapei squad and the Rabobank squad.
Well, our next big climb, they're not really big, but they're certainly there, is the Côte du Sart-Tillemont. There's the world champion, pulling himself back into some form. Number one, the winner for the past 2 years, in fact, Bartoli. And must have been very shocked there by the arrival on his right shoulder of Van den Broek on the climb of La Redoute.
Mikeli Bartley certainly thinking about last year. It was on the Côte de Sart-Tillemont that he actually launched his attack. Nobody was expecting the attack to come. They were all waiting in the back of their minds for the big attack to come on the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. And just before the summit, with about 1 kilometre to go, he took off, and that was it. They never saw him again. And he's probably expecting to launch his big attack there, because that, although not a steep climb, is pretty difficult towards the summit.
And the Côte d'Ance at the end. It's not a steep climb either, but when your legs are aching like they will be by that stage, it could be very decisive. And Andre Schmil at 1 minute and 5 seconds back in that chase group, so he's not completely out of it yet. It just depends how many attacks we get from this front group now.
A lot of big riders in this front group. The picture break up, unfortunately, because of the adverse weather conditions. Moving up along the outside, 21, Laurent Roux.
And this front group, sorry Paul.
At the front you can see there is a big desire by both Mapei and Rabobank to keep the pace up high. 26 kilometres left to go to the finish.
That's about 16 miles of racing now. 2 echelons forming there as Camazin sits at the back of the group. Paolo Bettini here now at the front, and the Rabobank rider just up behind him there, Marcus Zeberg. Number 71 is Revelon.
Nicky Abersold, champion of Switzerland, moving up there. Micheli Bartley, very comfortable in this group. 63 is Peter Farazijn, and in fact, after that very savage attack by Frank van den Broeke, he seems to have disappeared to the back of this group.
Yes, there he is there. And he has gone right onto the tail behind the champion of Holland. Interesting. Maybe he's waiting now to see what else he can develop here. Mario Ertz is the Lotto rider. Again, putting up another one. There's an attack on off the front, and this must be Zeberg.
The Rabobank riders obviously trying to toughen it up. They've got Martin den Bakker in this group, and they've also got Michael Bogaard as well. Bogaard, a very good rider. He will be looking to try and launch an attack later on, but this may well be a great victory for the current world champion, because there Oscar Camazin is looking in very good form today. He's brought himself up to real good form for this time of the season.
Well, good for him, because the Lamprey team need a good result, I think. They've been doing a lot of contributing to the racing all the season without getting anything really, really big. Marcus
Zeberg, I'm quite surprised to see him riding so well in a race like Liege Bastogne Liege, because I regard him much more as a sprinter, but certainly he's come on in leaps and bounds since he switched across this winter from the Post Swiss team to join here Rabobank. And as always, the best man in these one-day classics for the Team Telecom is Udo Bolts.
He's also a good stage race rider. There was talk even last year of him being the team leader on Telecom in the event that Ulrich never refound his form. That wasn't to be the case. Ulrich did refine his form, but Udo Bolts had a 9th place finish in the Tour de France, and he's right on the front now. The pace has been lifted again. That's not going to help, in fact, Andre Schmil's little bunch, which looked at one stage to be returning here. About 7 riders there are left now in the group, so that little attack by Zeberg has split the field.
There's the rest of the group. Van den Broek is going to be in that group behind, and he won't be too happy about that. That's the danger of sitting at the back of a group like this, trying to rest and recuperate to see how the race develops, because if it does split, you do end up getting caught in the wrong end of a split, and I think that's Van den Broek in 3rd position there in the chasing group.
So Van den Broek is watching everything. Has he recovered from that magnificent attack? We're not going to know for a while, I don't think. Udo Bolts here is again stretching the rivals. keeping a look on them, but deciding it's not worth it.
He jumped away there, and you see how he looked underneath his armpit there to see if he could see the shadows of the riders coming up behind, and in fact the shadows were there, and it was Niki Abersold. And in fact this is Peter Farrazijn, so Van den Broek has missed out on the split here, and there is Paolo Bettini, and race radio telling us in fact Micheli Bartley has missed out on the split too.
Laurent Roux is the rider here. First time I've noticed him. He must have come up from that forward group on the climb of La Redoute. Well, this is interesting. Abersol is here, and that is Farrazijn at the back. He's 83. We're looking to see if 81 comes in the frame. Not a lot of people. Farrazijn's not going to help here, having left Van den Broek in that second group behind.
Farrazijn will be very happy just to sit on the back of the group here. Now very shortly we'll take a left-hand turn off this road here and descend down into the valley, and that is when they will approach the start of the Côte de Sartillemont. Now that is a very interesting situation because Van den Broek now is trying to ride across the gap. Big panic.
And Van den Broek is bridging on a huge gear as well right now as he tries to bridge the gap. One Rabobank coming along for the ride. Is it Den Bakker?
Looks very much like Den Bakker. You can see the red and white and blue stripe on his shoulder there, showing that he's a former champion of Holland. And Van den Broek is riding across the gap here. The fact is he's actually trying to ride across to Mario Aerts, because Mario Aerts was the man who first leapt across the gap, and there is the front group there, so it looks very much as if it will all come back together. But I would say a moment of panic there for the young Frank Van den Broek and Micheli Bartley.
Revelon sitting on the wheel of Bartley has that lovely position. He's cruising across now, but he's not firing like we expected, is he?
He's not the super Micheli Bartley of the last 2 years, although he rode across that gap quite easily. He is making mistakes. He is getting caught in the second part of these splits, and at the end of the day it's those efforts that count. It's those efforts that when it comes to the final attacks on the final climbs that you cannot afford to make all the time.
Another one gone, and this is another attack now. They're launching them thick and fast to try and break this race up.
Now that's interesting. Oscar Kamenzind has got away there. Again, it looks like Marcus Seberg joining onto the back there. Paolo Bettini. This may well be a bit of a surprise for Team Mapei, because Bettini seems to be riding a lot better today than in fact his team leader Micheli Bartley. Kamenzind now seeing the urgency of the advantage they've got over the split in that group is going straight to the front to put the pressure on. These riders will know that they've got the left-hand turn and the descent. Marco Velo is coming across here as well.
Well, we talk of Bettini being a great helper, you know, for Bartley, but it's not just that. He's such a strong rider. Who knows, if he gets himself in the right move here, he could well be the winner of this race. Had a stage win this year in Tirreno Adriatico. That was in March. This is proving very, very hard these last few kilometres now. Weather conditions perfect, roads are dry. Not organised yet, are they?
It's as if everybody wants to try and ride away to the finish alone, and nobody wants to work and control the tempo being set at the front. Seberg now sitting up in first position. Bettini reacting immediately to come onto his wheel. Kamenzind happy to be in third place, and Peter Farrazijn just keeping an eye on affairs and just waiting to make sure that his team leader from the Cofidis squad from France, Frank Van den Broek, comes up from behind. But another attack by Marco Velo. He's going for it.
Velo launches again, just as Farrazijn told him, I'm not going to work. And Velo has gone, and it's opened up little gaps between, but they're all struggling their way back. It's a very tough race this now to read properly. There's the echelon from behind. Now the riders are countering the move here, and is this is Michael Bogart, the champion of the Netherlands, now deciding it is the time to join the leaders.
Well, he saw that group, he saw it was starting to get dangerous, people putting pressure on at the front there. He decided that now's the time to leap across the gap. The champion of Holland's had a great season so far with an overall victory in Paris-Nice, supported by a very strong Rabobank team, but the reaction coming from Frank Van den Broek in person. He comes across there with Laurent Roux. There are now 8 riders at the front of this race, and there's a chase of around about 8 riders caught behind, including Micheli Bartley, Phil, who once again has missed out on the split.
He's just arrived. He's just arrived, an express train. He's just latched onto the back here. Somebody shot off the front at the same time but has sat up, and the long line has finally regrouped. But there'll be a few deep breaths now, because these boys are going to feel a little bit tired after that flurry of attacks.
A chance now to recuperate somewhat before the start of the climb de Saltillemont. They're at Tilf, 19 kilometers to go. They drop down here for about 1.5 kilometers into the valley below, and that is where they will then start the Côte de Saltillemont. And another few riders led by Udo Bolt getting onto the front group again.
So we're more or less back to the status quo, I think, as we head to the next climb on good roads. Our motorcyclist there almost got through, didn't he? And then the riders took him out. Try again, sir.
Well, in fact, it looked as if Udo Bolt got onto the tail of that group there, but in fact, the fact that they're going downhill here, one or two riders have lost the line in the corner. There is Bolt's moving up into last position, but one or two riders have been caught out and left behind as they go over the motorway. They'll drop down now into the valley, and there's a general regrouping.
Yes, that group is back together again. They all live to fight another day. It'll be interesting to see now if just how many riders have plans to launch an attack on the climb of the Saltillemont. Well, I don't think it'll just be Bartley, and I'm not sure whether Bartley has it left now, because he's coming up to the groups on the splits, and not with the leaders, but he's correcting himself, and that's not a good sign.
You have to be super strong and super confident to be able to tack on the Côte de Saltillemont. I would say the best thing to do is to wait for the final climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, because I don't really regard the climb up to Ans as being a major difficulty, although they have done over 265 kilometers by the time they get there. The Côte de Saint-Nicolas is a really difficult climb, and that is where, if you attack strongly at the bottom by the summit, you can open up an advantage of about 30 seconds.
We're 19 kilometers from the finish now. When we get to the climb, there'll be 17 kilometers from the finish. Something like 16 riders in this group, as they're settling down yet again to think of the next plan. They're all rather tenacious today, and it's unusual to see such a good selection of men in at this stage of the LBL.
A big long line. Again, it's the white jerseys on the front. That is Team Mapei. They still have great beliefs in Micheli Bartley, who I don't think today is in super condition. He will, though, ride with the courage and determination of a man who's going to look for a third victory here in Liege Bastogne Liege.
So it's a gentle freewheel now, down to the start of climb, what will be, in fact, climb number 9. We're always saying there's 10 climbs on the course, but we mustn't forget that it's also a little climb up to the finish line.
A lot of the climbs on the day here don't even register on the organisers' list of the climbs, but in this area of Belgium there's hardly any flat at all on the course Liege Bastogne Liege, as they drop down now, not very far away from the start of that final, well, the penultimate climb, I should say, the one where last year Micheli Bartley launched his incredible attack. But everybody will remember that, and they'll be waiting for the attack to come from Bartley, and certainly if he does attack today, it won't be a surprise.
Almost expected, I think. But these riders know now that Bartley is not the top form that they thought he might have, because otherwise he wouldn't have been caught on the climb of La Redoute.
Marco Vello sitting on the back of the group as they go over the river, and very shortly they've got a right-hand turn and then a left, and then the climb begins.
So we're a little bit out of town at the moment from Liège, not that far actually. This sort of road follows the river through. The riders often using this stretch of road for the previous warm-up training rides as they come down into the area for a week for the Ardennes Classics, the Côte de Saltillemont.
It's 9% at the steepest part, but it's only an average of 5%, and it's around about 3 kilometers long, and it's still on the front, the white jerseys of Team Mapei. And being on his own, Udo Bolt in the pink and white jersey of Telecom there has decided to take a break and sit near the back.
I don't blame him. Let's see if somebody takes a break off the front now. The pace is still very, very high indeed. It's quite an interesting climb this now, because we'll see if anybody does yo-yo, or are all these guys as strong as one another today.
It's still a very big group at the back of the group as well. A bit of a chat going on here between Frank van den Broeke and Peter Farazijn, talking together about the tactics they want to adopt. Peter Farazijn is proving to be a very good man to ride alongside Frank van den Broeke. He's always there towards the end of these classics, and now Bettini is having to sacrifice himself, Phil, which I feel is a bit of a shame because he has been riding well, probably just as strong as Micheli Bartley, but now he's slipping into the role of domestique.
And Mario Hertz on his wheel, and just behind, third in line, is Revelon. Continue to climb. And Paul, nobody attacking. It's almost as if now they've got the measure of each other.
Well, it's been a very long, difficult ride since the top of the Côte de la Redoute, and Paolo Bettini now is doing exactly as he did last year, setting the pace, keeping the pressure on, and that is preventing a lot of riders feeling that they've got the strength to attack. David Revelon, too, sitting in third position. Yevgeny Spruk in fourth place in the Lampre team. There is Figueras, but there's a big queue up behind there of the orange and white jerseys of the Rabobank team.
David Revelon, former leader of the Giro d'Italia, and the world champion now deciding he's going to watch from the back here. Looks quite cool. He's went over to the Tour Down Under in Australia this year with his Lampre team to start finding his form. It wasn't a race he did much in, but he certainly now seems to be finding his form. Well, it says L'Oreal is here, number 22. I haven't caught sight of him in this breakaway, but the other riders we've certainly seen.
Well, I hadn't spotted him either, but this group is really riding very well together. But I'm sure, Phil, that if nobody attacks on this climb, it will absolutely explode when they come to the final climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, because it's a difficult climb, and really you've got to suffer just to get your body up that climb at the end of 260 kilometers. Still, Bettini's putting all the pressure on the front, not even thinking about the possibility that he could bring another Italian victory here. He wants just one man to win, and that's Micheli Bartoli,
who's aiming for 3 wins. This is such a nice little rider, Bettini. Small frame he's got there, looks really nice on it, and he should be good on the climbs. He's not going to weigh as much as some of these riders. Cameron's still looking a little bit overweight here as he keeps his tempo going nicely.
In fact, right at the back there as well with Kamenzin was Micheli Bartley. Now, he shouldn't be riding so far to the back of a group this size, especially on a climb towards the end of Liege Bastogne Liege. He obviously is not in super condition, that's why he's riding so close to the back. But if he's not in good condition, he should have had a word with his teammate Paolo Bettini to say, look, don't you set the pace, I'm not in super good form this afternoon, save it a little bit for yourself, you've got a chance of victory.
Well, 6 hours has passed now since this race began from Liège. We've almost completed the big circuit, and racing back in, we crossed Liège itself, but we finished just outside in the town of Ans. And this is, he looks pretty cool, Hertz, doesn't he? He doesn't look under too much pressure right now.
Finished third a couple of days ago in the Flèche Wallonne on a very difficult and cold day in the Ardennes to the summit of the Mur de Huy. Yevgeny Spruk is also looking pretty cool as well as he looks across to see how his other adversaries are feeling in this group. There at the back, fourth from the back there, number 1 is Micheli Bartoli. Alongside him, Michael Bogard. Some very good riders in this group, and for the moment, nobody's too keen on attacking here on the Côte de Saint-Ilmont.
No, and it's difficult to tell when you look at the face of Bartoli just how he is feeling right now. He's clearly decided this isn't the climb he's going to attack on. He's running out of places. He may even leave it till the very last climb. 2 minutes now back to the Schmil group, so he is out of it at the moment.
He'll be happy to be in that group though, because he's not really the kind of rider to get himself over these tough climbs in a one-day classic like Liège Bastogne Liège, and still he will be able to pick up a few points in the UCI World Cup and may well just hold on to the jersey.
Revelon on the line, somebody's gone, Ebersol has gone, so this is the first attack we see now. The Swiss champion just shot out of the group there, and there's a big reaction from the field, but this might be an initial softener.
Well, Nicky Abersol just came out there. I wouldn't have expected him to attack, but he's obviously trying to soften up the opposition for the counter-attack to come from Michael Bogard. He is the man who's got good form this year. He's the man who won Paris-Nice just over a month ago, but that attack really didn't do anything at all. Now the attack coming from Paolo Bettini. He said, right, I've had enough, I'm going off on my own.
Well, good for him. Now is he also trying to soften up, or will Bartoli try and defend for him now and give this man the victory? The workhorse going clear, and this time the gap has opened. This is a good attack.
Well, that's a serious attack. In fact, he's done so much work on the front that once he was taken off the front and given a chance to sit in the wheels for a moment, he realised that in fact he's in a pretty big day. Now there's a reaction behind, a man from Rabobank coming across.
Well, about 14 kilometres, that's all now from the finish. About 9 miles of racing, some 20 minutes, and we're still, by the way, on a record speed schedule here. So the winner of the race today could become the record holder as well. There's Farazine joining them.
Farazine saw the danger there. He's digging deep. He's had a word, obviously, with Frank Vandenbroek. In fact, the whole group coming back together.
They are tenacious today. They've hauled themselves back in. And still, Paolo Bettini sets the pace at the front. Farazine on his wheel.
What an incredible ride by this man today. I feel if he had sat a bit further back in the group and looked after himself, he wouldn't be the man to actually go clear on a climb like this. But it's amazing the way the Italians are. They have this mentality of working for the leader, and today the leader, the sole leader for the Mapei team, was Micheli Bartley, which is why we can see these riders from Mapei just sacrificing themselves completely for the man wearing number 1.
Well, the Mapei team have had such a great season as well, again, shall we say, that they're looking to win this one, but I'm not so sure I would be confident now, because the big Mapei man, Micheli Bartoli, he's looking rather tamed at the moment, sitting at the back here, riding alongside Laurent Roux.
Well, there you can see the banner across the summit of the climb here of the Côte de Sartimont. There have been 1 or 2 little attacks, but nobody's got clear. But in fact, Marco Velo now trying to come up through the inside. But look at Bettini, the face on him. He doesn't want anybody riding clear of this group. I've done all of the work to keep it together, and he's nailed him back.
He's going to kick again. There's Marco Velo. He's got a little bit of a gap here, but he's got company on his wheel, and I think he'll sit up.
Big reaction as well coming from Mario Arts. I think Jean-Luc Vandenbroek, the team manager from Lotte, would be quite happy to have a man in the group. He would have preferred it to be André Schmil, but at least he does have some presence there. Obviously, Micheli Bartoli sitting at the back of the group here, thinking that there is just one place to attack now left, and that is the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. And that is a climb where you really have to survive. It is such a steep climb. The organisers, I felt, was certainly a little cruel when they went away from the city of Liège to put an extra 10 kilometres onto the course just so they could introduce that climb.
So they've got to rethink of something else now as they all come together again. And the main peloton is even further back than Schmil now. We're looking at 4 minutes to that group, and we're looking at just a whisker under 14 kilometres to go this time.
Farazine now starting to get more confidence. He's going to the front more often now to keep the pace high. He obviously realises Frank Vandenbroek is in good condition. Vandenbroek attacked viciously over the Côte de la Redoute, and now it's the turn of his teammate Peter Farazine to set the tempo on the front. It's a bit of flat over the top here of the Côte de Sartimont, and then there's a long straight descent down to the outskirts of Liège before they turn left to go and find the bottom of this climb, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, in an area they call Little Italy because of the number of Italian workers who moved here to work in the steelworks. And then again an attack by Marco Velo.
Well, Velo is persistent, but I can't really see too much necessity to attack here, quite frankly, because they're expecting now the riders to regroup and go for the last climb. The last 2 climbs, but Velo decided it might be a surprise if he does it now.
It's not the best place to attack, Phil, over the top here, because it's very easy for everyone, because we're starting to slowly tilt down towards Liège and the road is very fast indeed, so that will encourage the guys behind to in fact chase, and in fact they've done it very quickly because Martin Dimbacher is already here.
That's true. Almost as soon as our caption generator for Belgian television told us who was in the break, he whipped it away there because it was clear it was changing again.
Peter Farazine digging deep into his reserves. He wasn't too happy with that attack coming. He was at the front of the group there talking to his team manager, but Martin Dimbacher is very happy and he's decided to have another go and try and open up the gap. Immediately though, Paolo Bettini is onto his wheel and Marco Velo is there as well, but the work being done by Peter Farazine in 4th position on the road there is going to bring it all back together.
Well, this is an intriguing race, isn't it, towards the end of Liege Bastogne Liege. All of these riders are throwing everything into this race. They must be pulling away from everybody else, but there is absolutely no favourite anymore in this group.
It's hard to pick a winner at the moment. They're all very much even. Apart from the reputation of Micheli Bartley, who's the winner of the last 2 years, none of the other riders stand head and shoulders above the others, and we will see the strong men because they will naturally come to the front on the final climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, which really is an unbelievably steep climb as it winds its way up towards the finish line.
And what a fast race this has been. They are. The fastest ever recorded was last year, barely touching 40 kilometres an hour. If this pace continues, they're going to run out with a record speed in excess of 41 kilometres an hour.
That is unbelievable. That is amazing when you think of the terrain that this race has been over. There's hardly any flat on this course, Liege Bastogne Liege. If you're not going uphill, you're going down dale. Peter Farazijn again taking over control at the front of this group, and moving into second place Marcus Seberg and Paolo Bettini up into third.
And Marco Velo just popping in to our picture at the bottom too. A little bit of unloading of the drinks and the food now. They're thinking of the finish perhaps. Laurent Roux tagged on the back, and certainly we saw earlier that caption for Laurent Loriaus. Well, he's not in this group, so I think that must be deemed to be an error in numbers, I think.
Micheli Bartley still at the back of the group. Either he's not in a great day, or he's taking a complete gamble on launching one last vicious attack on the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. All of these riders now getting communication with their team management from the race radios behind. Bettini moving to the front. There's Marcus Seberg and Peter Farazijn, the last remaining teammate of Frank van den Broek for the Cofidis squad. Now this is the area where you go round through the back streets of Liège, and showing the former glory of this city as one of the great steel manufacturing areas of Belgium.
With the river Meuse running through the centre of the city, as the riders now will head out into the suburbs for the finish at Ans. And this group, well, this isn't the road you attack on. They're going to freewheel their way round now. It looks like showdown will come on the Côte de Saint-Nicolas once they come off this road.
Average gradient when they get there is 7.5%, but you're looking at a gear ratio of around about 39 teeth on the front and 21 teeth on the rear if you're going to attack. Otherwise you need a 23 tooth sprocket just to ride up it. Amazing to see after such a long ride, 260 kilometers these riders have been in the saddle, and such a big group still at the head of affairs. Nobody really sticking out at the moment, Phil, like a big favourite. Micheli Bartley, I'm not too sure. He's moving a little further forward, but he's obviously being very marked here by Oscar Kamenzind.
Interesting to note, Paul, that Jalabert, who made all of that running, never got with this group because he was too tired after that rather silly breakaway, unless he's planning on doing other things a little bit later in the season, and he may have just been searching for form. Who knows? Time will tell.
Well, one race where you don't search for form is Liege Bastogne Liege. If you're going to ride a race like that, you have to ride it sensibly and ride for the win. And I cannot for the life of me understand why Jalabert thought with 80 kilometers left to go to the finish he could ride away from a class field like this.
Well, I know that Sean Kelly, who's commentating not far away, thought it was a pretty silly move and not one he would have made. And of course Sean won this race twice.
Sean Kelly was another master tactician, just like Johan Museeuw, the great Belgian champion at the moment. Kelly was always able to race in adverse conditions, tough conditions. Whenever the going got tough, Sean Kelly came to the front.
In fact, although it did go to look like rain, it never came, and the sun is back out. The thunder promised hasn't arrived, the snow hasn't come. This is turning out to be a pretty calm Liege Bastogne Liege, and it's got 16 riders now, and I think they all think they have a chance of winning it.
They're all now going to start to relax a bit, loosen the muscles a little bit, because shortly they will start this climb. And all of the riders stay in the city of Liège for around about 5 days at this time of the year, because they ride the Flèche Wallonne not too far away from here, and then stay at the hotels in Liège and ride the course several times, especially the last 30 or 40 kilometers. So they will all now know what this climb is going to be like, and they will all now know that how difficult it is going to be, and they will all wait for the big attacks to come. And a lot of people will be looking to Micheli Bartoli as they now wind their way through the streets of what they call in this area Little Italy, and the Italian flags are certainly out.
The Italian names are on the bottom of the climb, and Micheli Bartoli was there, so too is Andrea Taffi. Well, they'll be disappointed because he's not riding today, but even so he is Italian. Now the pressure's gone on in front of Peter Farazijn. He's having a real dig here now. That can only be for one reason, Paul, to launch Van den Broek.
All he's thinking about now is riding to the bottom of this climb, and then he will switch off. Just 10 kilometers remaining to the finish, and for the end of the race for Peter Farazijn, it's going to be in around about 600 meters. He wants to take that corner in first place and have his teammate Frank van den Broek follow him in second or third spot.
Well, without Lance Armstrong on the US Postal team, we haven't seen too much of those riders today. There are some riders with that back group with Andre Schmil, but they didn't make the decisive split on La Redoute. Now we're looking at the riders who did 16 of them here, and they're all beginning to pack at the front. Look at this.
Look at this, look at the speed that Peter Varazijn has gone to the back of the group. And in fact, Frank van den Broeke is in around about 5th position there at the moment. Moving to the front, Paolo Bettini. Bartoli is in about 6th or 7th spot. And everybody now is trying to tighten up their straps and get ready for the big launch.
Well, watch out for Michael Bogart there, because he's trying to move up on the left of our picture as an attack goes off the front. And is this Bettini again, or is it Bartoli? It's Bettini.
Well, that's remarkable. This man has done so much work. The attack was expected to come from Micheli Bartley, but it's Paolo Bettini, and a big response behind by the world champion Oscar Kamenzind. Kamenzind hasn't quite made it yet, but moving up into 3rd position on the road is Frank van den Broeke. Now the champion of Holland goes, Michael Bogart.
He looked to be itching to get away. Now he's been finding he's chasing Bettini, who's gone clear, and I think that's Frank van den Broeke on his wheel.
Sevgeny Spruk in 4th position, trying to move up as well. Bogart trying to ride Van den Broeke off his wheel, but this man may cause a surprise, Phil. Paolo Bettini's done so much work for Micheli Bartoli, and now he's the man in the lone lead.
Well, this means to me that Bartoli has told Bettini to try for himself because he's not feeling good, and in fact Bogart has gone right by him, and somewhere around Bogart is Van den Broeke.
There in fact is Van den Broeke, 3 or 4 lengths off the back of the Dutch champion, but he's closing it very easily, and they have now got a big gap over the world champion Oscar Kamenzind. 2 men in the lead, Michael Bogart and Frank van den Broeke.
Well, this is a Dutch-Belgian tandem now, and Van den Broeke trying to give the home country, and he lives not far away. He's a French speaker from the region, now trying to give them a home victory, and they're going clear on the climb here now. Those motorbikes really at this stage shouldn't be in amongst the 2 leaders, because the gap behind is not great at all. But they're trying to trap the picture, which they think might be the decisive move in this year's Liege Bastogne Liege. But Bogart is so impressive now.
He looks good, he's very strong, out of the saddle, nice and comfortable in the meantime. In fact, Van den Broeke coming up alongside, he's on the bottom of the handlebars, he's going to try and put Bogart into difficulty.
Well, Van den Broeke is using the motorbikes as his targets, and he's racing towards them, and this is a big attack now. The last one was on the La Redoute climb. He's got Bogart on the defensive, and you probably saw with that shot as well, the others are dropping out of it.
A long way behind now. Frank van den Broeke has gone. All Bogart has to do now is not panic, just try and ride himself back into the race. But you can see Van den Broeke has already opened up a big gap as they approach the summit of the climb. It's around about 75 yards.
And it's a 7.5% average gradient here, and we're still on that record speed, by the way, in excess of 41 kilometers an hour, which is unbelievable. The bikes really shouldn't be there right now, because Van den Broeke is using them to his best of his ability. Here's the attack again, which just got rid of the champion of the Netherlands. Last time he did it, he got rid of the man that all Italy wanted to win for a 3rd year, and that was Mikela Bartoli on La Redoute. Now Van den Broeke is again on his own. This time I'm not so sure they'll get him back.
A great move by Frank van den Broeke there. He's opening up all the time on Michael Bogart. There is Bogart. It's out to 200 meters now, and it's going to be a mano to the finish, because race radio is telling us the guys behind are in all kinds of difficulty.
Well, Kamenzind is the rider now left to do the pacemaking at the back here, in what is now 14 riders left in, because 2 have fled the coup, and in fact the rider in 2nd place is Bogart, and they are probably between 10 and 20 seconds ahead now.
But the man who's we're looking at now, Michael Bogart, the champion of Holland, has got the advantage, because he can see all the time Frank van den Broeke in front of us. The official time gap is 7 seconds as we look down the long roads here on the outskirts of Liège. Van den Broeke, though, is over on the flat part of the course now, picking up the pace, getting into his time trial position. And let's not forget that just before the classic season started, Phil, he won the final stage of the 3 days of La Panna, and that was a time trial.
Well, he is gritting his teeth now, and this is the move. It's got to be, because if it doesn't work, Van den Broeke won't be getting placed today. He's over the top now of the climb of the Saint-Nicolas, but it's not the last climb. There's still a climb comes in the last couple of kilometers of the race, and it finishes in the last few hundred meters. And now Van den Broeke has really shown them a clean pair of wheels. Look at this. There's the lone figure of Michael Bogart, and if the helicopter can do the same pan again, I think it's a long way back to the bunch now.
Van den Broek right down on the bottom of the handlebars in his time trial position, getting as low as possible. Now all he's got to do is try and keep away from Bogard, and he's doing that nicely, thank you. 11 seconds the advantage, but it could all go to nothing in the final 2 kilometers up to the finish line. It's a long straight road up to the finish line in Arns with a left-hand turn at the top, and all of the time Van den Broek will be in sight. This is the chase group, and it looks as if Oscar Kamenzin has turned off because he's sitting at the back.
Well, there's a lone rider up the road there, and I think that must be Bogard, can be seen by that, but Van den Broek is already now 11 seconds ahead of this man. This has got to be a winning move, but it is a nasty little climb when you're flat out towards the finish, and if there's any aching in those legs, then he might fold up.
An incredible rider, Frank Van den Broek, turned professional in 1994 for the Lotto squad, fell out with his uncle Jean-Luc and switched across to ride to Mapei. This winter he's moved across to Cofidis, and in a short career he's already amassed 48 victories as a pro.
And just look at him now, it's all or nothing. He refused to speak to the press at the start of the race this morning. He granted television literally 1.5 minutes. And when they asked him was he going to win, he says, well, I hope Bartoli finishes second. Huh.
Cheeky lad, but that's what champions are made of. Courage and hard words, but at the moment he's backing up those hard words with his legs. Bogard looks like he's recovering now. He's out of the saddle on one of the inclines, but this road is a very bumpy road up to the finish line now. There's little bits of cobbles thrown in there just to toughen up the legs after a hard ride. Over 6.5 hours in the saddle, 2.5 kilometers left to go to the finish.
And Michael Bogard also developing now as a great bike rider. His hero, by the way, is the formidable Joop Zoetemelk. And now it looks as though even Bogard is going to put his name down on the honours list too of Liege Bastogne Liege.
The crowds at the finish line here, looking at the pictures on the big screen, are going absolutely wild. It's a Belgian crowd here, and they're hoping to get a Belgian winner. They have to cast their minds back, in fact, to the victory of Dirk de Wolf here many years ago.
And that itself was something of a surprise. Before that it was Erik van Lancker. Both of those riders left the mark on world cycling. They're both retired now, but this is the young man of the future, the man I think they hope will become as good as the great Eddy Merckx, who is commentating at the moment on Belgium television, and I can tell you he's pretty impressed.
He's very impressed by the performance of Frank Van den Broek, but he should be impressed by the performance too of Michael Bogard, 25 years of age, wearing number 31, champion of Holland. He has still got a chance to pull back Frank Van den Broek. The gap though is all of the time going out further and further to the advantage of the young Belgian.
Well, Bogard is fast becoming a real top bike rider, winner this year of Paris-Nice. And now performing like this, and don't forget his big classic, the Amstel Gold Race, still to come in his country, and he's showing us now he's got the good form for that too.
Big power in the thighs of Frank Van den Broek. He's starting to roll the top of his shoulders a bit now, the fatigue coming in after 6.5 hours in the saddle, but he knows he has to concentrate. He will see the corner at the top that he's aiming for. He's on the Côte d'Ans. It's 15% at the steepest part, 9.2% average, and all he wants to do is get to that corner and turn left, and he'll see the finishing straight.
And that is hard enough at this stage of the race now. He's made his move, he's got to hang on in there, and it looks to me as though Bogard is still riding very, very strongly. Who will have the better climb up here? Bogard is still clear of the field, but he's, Bogard is in the hot seat because that group is about 10 seconds behind him.
He's fighting for his life too. He's fighting to try and survive. Not only is he trying to chase down Frank Van den Broek, he's trying to fight off the return of that group behind. He's put in a great attack himself on the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, but it was Frank Van den Broek who was able to come back to his wheel and launch the counter attack. Now we get a chance to see how the race is developing. This is the long look down the corner, from the corner before the finishing straight. There is Van den Broek, there is a group behind, and somewhere in the middle must be Michael Bogard.
Well, this is a dramatic finish here now. They can pull in the Italian flag and start flying the Belgian one because Van den Broek can't get caught. But what about the champion of Holland in the background there, because they are closing in on him very, very quickly now. They're over the top of the climb, and one last look round by Frankie Van den Broek, and then is going to come this great victory for this man. He really is becoming the star of Belgian cycling, and I think they're right. He might have the ability of Eddy Merckx because he's only 24.5 years of age.
Well, he's inside the banner now, indicating 500 meters to go. And one rider attacking behind Michael Bogert back down the road there looked very much to me like the shape of Micheli Bartley trying to come across. Vandenbroek can relax a bit now. He's been under pressure for the last 5 or 6 kilometers since the summit of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and he now knows that very shortly he will take this left-hand turn and the road will flatten out, and in about 250 meters the finish line will be right in front of him. He has got a big gap, but it's going to be very tight for Michael Bogert.
300 meters to go now. You can start waving. Frank Vandenbroek is going to love this now. Cocky was he at the start when he said he would win? It doesn't appear that way now, and Bogert might just hang on there. That's the vital left-hand corner. Lance Armstrong knows what it's like to come round there too. But this rider, and look at the clock at 6:25. The average speed, if they confirm it, is in excess of 41 kilometers an hour. He is winning the fastest Liege Bastogne Liege in the history of the event. And he's Belgian. You can't be more complete than that, as Frank Vandenbroek, and there it is, Paul, 41.1 kilometers an hour.
That's absolutely remarkable over a course like this. And let's just look back down the finishing straight. Michael Bogert has managed to survive. He has managed to hold on to second place. A great performance by him, but he couldn't match the attack of Vandenbroek.
Oh boy, he suffered but hung on, so well done to Michael Bogert. Comes home in second place today. The race behind is split up a little bit now, but he gets the second place. In fact, he's pulled away in that last 500 or 600 meters. I think they realized they weren't going to catch him. Martin Den Bakker gets second and third for the Rabobank, and Micheli Bartley freewheels over the line, beaten today by 3 better men. I think probably a little overtired after his long escape in the Flèche Wallonne. And this man, Paolo Bettini, deserves that 5th place, ahead of Nicky Ebersold of the Rabobank team, and Marcus Zuberg coming in there too in 7th. The world champion, Oscar Kamazind, crossing the line in 8th. But I'm delighted to see that Bettini got that high finish as well. There's the scene on top of the final côte today of Liege Bastogne Liege, and for the first time for many years they've got themselves a Belgian winner.
Well, the press very excited around Frank Vandenbroek in the winners' podium, preparing to climb up there to receive his accolades as the winner of this year's Liege Bastogne Liege. Frank, have you recovered sufficiently? It looks as if you have just received the congratulations from Micheli Bartoli. This was a race that you've dreamed about. You've talked about it. You said you were going to win. For me, it's a dream that's realized today. It's something in the career of a bike rider that you always think about. After having ridden Paris-Roubaix, it's a pretty good performance. Everybody said Paris-Roubaix is a suicide for Frank Vandenbroek. He shouldn't do it. But again, Frank Vandenbroek seems to have been right. You attacked perfectly. You've also got the lead in the World Cup. It's a day of dreams for me. I could imagine that it would happen, but it really is just a dream.
Well, this is it. He knew at this point that he'd won. Whether he knew he'd won the fastest Liege Bastogne Liege in history, I don't know. But at 41.1 kilometers an hour, Frankie Vandenbroek really is the star of the day. 6 hours and 25 minutes in the saddle. He salutes the crowd now. A marvellous result for him. And he is going from strength to strength, and he's still only 24.5 years of age. What a marvellous day today. He hit them on the La Redoute. They brought him back, so he waited. He used his teammate Peter Faddersijn to launch the attack from where he came then up to the finish to win alone. He won by 27 seconds from Michael Bogert, and by 37 seconds from Martin Den Bakker. So the Rabobank boys are getting 2 places in the top 3. Micheli Bartoli, the winner for the past 2 years, still a very creditable 4th place. Paolo Bettini, the domestic, getting a great 5th. Nicky Ebersold getting 3 Rabobank men in the top 6. Well, a marvellous race this has been. It was the fastest on record, and we hope you have enjoyed this one, because this is one for the archives. Until the next time, for Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.